on Metals and Hidden, Supreme and Ancient Philosophers' Medicine. By Morienus Romanus, formerly a hermit in Jerusalem, author. Now for the first time is added Chrysorrhemon, or On the Art of Alchemy, a dialogue, which demonstrates the most illustrious actions of this science, in accordance with reason and natural principles, but exposes the dreams and nonsense of impostors and flatterers. At Hanno on the Main, published by Guilielmus Antonius, 1593, Robertus Vallensis, RVGL. The spirit is within, take it, with the dregs removed, by a gentle art, with the dregs in earth cast down by a kindly fire, often sprinkled. Within you have the elixir, dissolve, coagulate, the printer to the kind reader, greetings. The small book of the gold-bearing art, which now at last is presented to your eyes, has previously been seen by few and often desired by many. Its author is from a later age, and though he is frequently praised by them, I would discuss him here if the brevity of my task did not prevent it. It was once translated, however imperfectly, from Arabic into Latin. We recently came across two very old copies of it. One bears the name of the translator, while the other suppresses it. The styles of expression used by the translators differ greatly, as we have discovered in their comparison, and although neither is particularly skillful or elegantly Latin, Morienus's meaning is revealed, yet the speech is certainly more awkward and unpolished. More importantly, many things are missing in this version that are not idly omitted in the other. Otherwise, they agree in content, except for certain places that may have been corrupted by scribal errors. Thus we have chosen to publish the version from Castrensi, as it is the less flawed and more agreeable one. However, discrepancies from the other have been noted in the margin whenever the matter is of any importance. May God grant that this small effort be fruitful for you. Live and farewell. To the mocking one, wisdom. You ridicule all books on Chrysopoeia along with their students, without any distinction. For what reason? For such untimely laughter might seem unreasonable to others if you cannot provide a cause for it. Do you not seek wealth among the professors of alchemy and truth among the writers of formulas? Surely you have handled and counted the coins of each and all. Moreover, you have studied all the writings of the authors of this art. Indeed, you have even fully understood each of their sentences, and by some keen experience, proven them to be deceitful. Thus you are a just mocker, and in your careful judgment, Morienus the Roman, just as among chemists, so also among fools, does not hold the lowest place. But listen you, such arguments are unknown to us, and indeed, if I may say so among us, I would rather not agree with you before fully grasping the hidden meaning of Morienus himself, which, if the gods permit, if it pleases you and you understand well, then demonstrate it in plain speech and refute his fallacies by the strength of experiments or arguments. If you accomplish this, then you may, with full merit and with our approval, laugh at him. But if not, as far as we can judge, you yourself are in need of sanity, and if you take my advice before your condition worsens, you will set sail for Anticyra. Book on the Composition of Alchemy, which was written by Morienus Romanus for Calid, king of the Egyptians, translated from Arabic into Latin by Robert Castrensi. Preface of Robert Castrensi. We read in the histories of ancient authors that there were three philosophers, each of whom was called Hermes. The first of them was Enoch, who was also called Hermes by another name, and by yet another name Mercury. The second was Noah, who likewise was known by another name as Hermes, and also called Mercury. The third of them was Hermes, who reigned in Egypt after the flood, and held his kingdom for a long time. This Hermes was called Triplex by our ancestors because of the threefold collection of virtues attributed to him by the Lord God. He was a king, a philosopher, and a prophet. He was the Hermes who, after the flood, was the first inventor and author of all the arts and disciplines, both liberal and mechanical. All those who came after him strove to follow in his path and adhere to his footsteps. What more can be said? It would be long and difficult for us to recount such a vast matter and to recall the virtues and deeds of such a great man to present memory. However, we have not undertaken this manner of speaking in the translation of this divine book, nor do our own intellectual limitations, or the leisure to study and write, allow us to explain these matters sufficiently. But for this reason we have introduced his name in the prologue of this book, because he was the first to discover and publish it. For this is indeed a divine book, and it is entirely filled with divinity. In it, the true proof of the two testaments is contained, for if anyone diligently studies this book and fully understands it, the truth of both testaments, as well as the way and sufficiency of both lives, will not remain hidden from him. This is the book that is called On the Composition of Alchemy, and since what alchemy is, and what its composition consists of, has scarcely been known to our Latin language, I have placed this word in the present discourse, although it is unknown and marvelous, so that it may be clarified by its definition. Hermes and others who followed him have defined this term in this way, as in the book on the transformation of substances. Alchemy is a corporeal substance derived from one, and composed through one, simply joining more precious things together through knowledge and effect, and by natural mixture converting them into a superior kind by nature. In what follows, what we have stated will be explained, where also its composition will be fully discussed. But we, although our intellect may be weak and our Latin very modest, We have nevertheless undertaken this great and immense task of translating from Arabic into Latin. Therefore, out of the singular grace bestowed upon us by God among modern scholars, we give thanks to the living God, who is both three in one. However, I did not wish my name to be omitted at the beginning of the prologue, lest someone else claim this labor of ours for themselves, and, in doing so, also appropriate its praise and merit as if it were their own. What more, I humbly ask and beseech all that none among us should let their mind wither in envy toward my name. For God knows to whom he grants his grace, and the Spirit proceeds from grace, inspiring whom he wills. Therefore, we have reason to rejoice, since the Creator and Founder of all things shows to everyone, as it were, a part of his divinity, so that it may not remain hidden from us. The Discourse of Morienus, the Roman hermit of Jerusalem. All parts of philosophy were fully grasped by the mind of Hermes. When he had spent many years studying and perfecting the higher teachings of mastery, he finally discovered this knowledge himself and was the first to publish it. He composed a book on the subject, which he kept as his own, and after his death he left it as an inheritance to his disciples. After his passing, his disciples studied this book and his teachings for a long time, so that they might attain its effect. Once they had achieved their goal, they provided various and even countless precepts regarding it. They did this to prevent those who came after them from revealing this knowledge as something common to the unwise. A long time after the passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, there arose a certain divine man, endowed with spiritual gifts. He had studied divinity for a long time, and among many sacred books he found this one. This man was originally from Alexandria, and was called by his Alexandrian name, Adfar Alexandrinus. He, however, after finding the aforementioned book, did not cease to study it with a vigilant mind and great diligence. After he had studied it for a long time, he fully attained its effect and knowledge. From this knowledge, this divine man gave many, various, and countless precepts. When these precepts were spread under his name throughout all parts of our region, news of his name and knowledge reached me while I was residing in the city of Rome. At that time I was in Rome, where I was born. I was still young, my chin not yet covered with its first beard, studying diligently, and from my earliest years, raised as a Christian by both parents, and by then already fully acquainted with Latin literature. Having heard of this man's name and fame, I quickly abandoned my parents and homeland, and did not allow my body to rest until I had arrived in Alexandria. Upon entering the city, I wandered as a new visitor through the streets and paths until I found the house of this man. At last I found his house and entered it. When I had entered, I saw this man sitting in his oratory studying his books. When he fixed his eyes upon me, looking intently, he said, "Friend, come closer." I approached him and sat beside him on the straw. Then, as I sat down on what had been placed there, I observed that the man, though greatly advanced in age, still had a vigorous appearance, with a noble face and a well-proportioned stature. Indeed, his face revealed to those who observed him closely everything that lay hidden in his mind. After we had spoken for some time, he asked me my name, where I was from, and what had brought me on my journey. I answered him, saying, "I am called Morienus, a Roman by birth. It was the fame of your name and knowledge that compelled me to leave my parents and homeland." Then he asked, "What is your faith, or which gods do you worship?" I replied, "I profess my Christian faith. I am a follower of Christ, and I worship him as the one and triune God." Then Adfar said, "It is good that you have found me, and even more so that, as a man still of the world, you have sought me out. For I shall reveal to you the secrets of all divinity, which until now I have refused to disclose to almost anyone. But you must listen to me with all the focus of your mind and strength, for I will make you a son of my entire discipline." After these words I was filled with immense joy. What more can I say? It would be too long to recount each of the teachings and discussions we had on this subject. I remained with him, and I conducted myself so admirably that he revealed to me the secrets of all divinity. Later, Adfar died, and after his death a few days later, I left Alexandria and set out for Jerusalem. I arrived there and even chose a hermitage within its borders, where I could lead a life suitable to my faith and profession. Not many years before, a certain king arose in Egypt, named Makoya. He had a son named Gazid, who reigned in Egypt after his father's death and inherited his kingdom. Gazid in turn had a son named Calid, who ruled Egypt for a long time after his father's death. This king was wise and prudent, highly knowledgeable in all sciences. He greatly valued the wise and the philosophers, not only for their common disciplines but especially for their knowledge of this book. He never ceased searching, both in known and unknown provinces, for someone who could reveal to him the teachings of this book. Driven by this desire, he gathered many wise men and philosophers around him, those who claimed to understand the mastery of this book but were in truth ignorant of it. He also lavished them with many great gifts, trusting in their words for a long time. One day while I was in the desert, news of this king was brought to me by a traveler. When I heard it, I left my solitude and as quickly as possible traveled to the borders of his land, not to seek riches or gifts from him, but to instruct the beloved in these special teachings. After I entered his lands, I traveled through many places and finally found the king. When I met him and spoke with him about various matters, I discovered him to be a man of great wisdom and adorned with every virtue of prudence. I then said to him, "O good king, may God guide you to something better. I wish for you to prepare a house for me, suitable for my teachings. The king ordered a house to be prepared for me and adorned according to my desire. I entered this house and did not leave it until I had completed the entire teaching. When it was completed, I placed it within the house, and around the vessel in which it was contained, I inscribed these words. All those who possess everything within themselves are in no way in need of another's help. After writing these words, I secretly left the city and the entire region, returning to my hermitage. Later the king entered the house that I had left, and found the perfected teaching just as I had left it. As he examined it more and more carefully, he saw the words I had inscribed around the vessel. When he read and fully understood them, he immediately mourned my absence. Then, in his anger, he ordered the execution of all those whom he had kept with him for many years for the sake of this teaching. Afterward the king said, "Summon Galip, my faithful servant." Galip was a captive whom the king's father Gezid had taken before his death. He had pledged his loyalty. The king trusted him greatly and said to him, "O Galip, my servant, I do not know what I should do now." But Galip replied to the king, "My lord, God will provide what we must do next." The king was deeply saddened and grieved day and night beyond what can be imagined. Then, after several years had passed, the king went out one day to a place called Dirmaram for hunting. It so happened that Galip, while still a captive, encountered a man wandering in the wilderness. He questioned him and said, "Friend, who are you? Where do you come from and where are you going?" The man replied, "I am from Jerusalem. I was born in Jerusalem, and for many years I lived in the mountains of Jerusalem with a certain hermit. While I was there, I heard how King Calid was tirelessly seeking someone to teach him the mastery of Hermes. When I heard this about the king, I immediately left my homeland so that I might deliver this message to King Calid. I know a man who is highly skilled in this knowledge, and I strongly wish to present him to the king." Then Galip said, "Be silent, brother, be silent. It is enough that you have said this much. I would rather you live than die. Many have come to the king, claiming to know this mastery, but when they failed to prove their skill, they were executed by the king. I am afraid, and if you stand before the king with such words, you may be executed." Then the man said, "Do not fear this, but do not delay in bringing me before the king." Galip then said, "This now pleases me, but be careful not to die." So Galip brought the man and placed him before the king, saying, "O good king, behold a man who does not fear death." When the king fixed his eyes upon him, he asked, "Who are you?" The man replied, "I am from Jerusalem. When I lived in the mountains with a certain hermit, I often heard of your name and goodness, and how you tirelessly seek wise men and scholars who could reveal to you the teachings of the old master Hermes. So I have come to you, O good king, that you may heed my counsel and attain your desire. I know a man living in the mountains of Jerusalem to whom all wisdom has been revealed by the Lord God. He is steadfast in his faith, and is regarded as such by both God and men. One day, while we were discussing many matters in his hermitage, he happened to tell me that he could accomplish this mastery. When I heard this, trusting in the truth I had often recognized in him, and also in the fact that every year he sent large quantities of gold and silver, as I had often seen, to the city of Jerusalem, I became completely certain of his words, and we often discussed these matters together. Then he said, "If I were to stand before you, you would reward me with many great gifts, and never remove me from your favor." Then the king said, "What kind of speech is this that you speak, or what mind could have persuaded you to come here? You are a fool, you do not know how many, and of what kind have been killed by me for such words. But if what you say were true, you would be greatly rewarded and never removed from my favor. However, if it is not true, you must know that you will suffer the greatest torment." Then the man said, "O good king, I am satisfied with both of your promises, but still you must heed my advice." The king then said, "O man, tell me a little about this person and his appearance. Some years ago a man came to me who, to tell you the truth, completed this mastery for me. When he completed it, he left behind the finished work, but he did not leave me his knowledge. He secretly withdrew and departed." Then the man said, "This man is very old, of great stature, with a noble face and distinguished features, adorned with virtues. His way of life and his habits are pleasing to God. He is a hermit living in the mountains of Jerusalem, and if you wish to know his name, he is called Morienus Romanus, an old hermit." Then the king turned to his servant Galip and said, "This is truly the man about whom I have long grieved with you." Then Galip said, "O good king, it is as I believe." The king rejoiced greatly, and beyond what could be imagined, received this man most graciously. He then ordered that many gifts be given to him, and at the same time promised him even greater rewards. Thus, this is the story of Morienus the Roman, how he attained the mastery of Hermes. Here begins the discourse of Galip, the servant and captive of King Calid, son of Gezid, son of Makoya. Galip the captive said, "A few days after these things had been reported to the king by that man, the man came and stood before the king and said, 'O good king, may God guide you to what is good. But I do not wish for us to delay any longer in what we have promised you. Therefore, summon all your most worthy men, and grant me some of them, so that they may travel with me and return with me, for we have a long journey ahead.' The king, gazing at him with a calm expression, said, 'You speak well, let it be done.' Then the king ordered me to be summoned before him quickly. When I had stood before him, he said, 'O good servant Galip, gather all my best men with you, and from them choose as many and whichever ones please this man, so that they may travel and return with you. For he had said, a long journey still lay ahead of us. So I did as the king had commanded, and after a few days we began our journey. We set out for Jerusalem, traveling through many impassable and desolate places, spending many days on the road until at last, we arrived in Jerusalem. As we wandered through the mountain wilderness, exhausted, we discovered a hermitage where Morienus the Roman, an old hermit, lived. When we entered, we found there an elderly man, tall in stature, thin in body, with a noble face and distinguished features. We were greatly amazed by both his presence and his way of life. His entire skin was rough and wrinkled from the harshness of the haircloth he wore. Then the man who had led us there said, O companions, this is Morienus the Roman, the old hermit. As I observed him more closely, I immediately recognized him. Upon recognizing him, I greeted him on behalf of King Calid. Upon hearing the king's name, the good man smiled and invited us to come closer. We rejoiced and gladly sat with him. The man of God then questioned us about the state of our king and the kingdom. When I reported everything to him, I also revealed to him the purpose of our journey. Turning to us he said, I rejoice greatly, my sons, that you have found me. I shall go with you, so that King Calid may finally see me, whom he has long desired to meet, and so that he may recognize the wondrous power of the Creator through me. After we had rested for several days to recover from the hardships of our journey, we set out again and returned to our homeland. When we arrived before the king, he saw the man of God. As soon as he beheld him, he recognized him at once. Embracing me, he said, O good servant Galip, this is truly the man about whom I have long lamented with you. Now I wish for you to recount to me immediately all that happened to you on your journey. So I recounted everything to him in order from the beginning. The king then acknowledged the man of God whom we had brought and invited him to sit beside him, saying, O old man, I wish to know your name and the nature of your profession. I had no other opportunity to inquire about these things from you before, and I was still doubtful of your words. Then the man of God replied, I am called Morienus Romanus. My profession is that of the Christian faith. My religion and way of life are those of a hermit. Then the king said, O Morienus, how many years have passed since you chose the life and habit of a hermit? And he replied, It has been 4 years since the death of King Hercules, that I have lived as a hermit. The king was greatly pleased with this man's wisdom, humility, patience, modesty, and grace, for he was not a man of many words, nor was he arrogant in mind, rather, he was humble, wise, and kind, as was fitting for such a man. Then the king said, O Morienus, would it not be for you? Would it not be better to remain in the company of those who pray to God in churches rather than to dwell alone in the mountains and their solitudes? But Morienus replied, May you be well, my king. The good that I have now, and what I hope for in the future, comes from God and is placed in his hands. Let him do as he wills. I do not doubt that among gatherings and assemblies, rest is found, while in solitude in the mountains, there is toil. But no one reaps unless he has sown, and what he sows that he will also reap. Therefore, I hope that the goodness of divinity will not abandon me in this life of the world, for the path to true rest is exceedingly narrow, and no one can enter it except through the affliction of the soul. Then the king said, All that you say is undoubtedly true, but what comes from a faithful heart appears false to me. The king said this because he was still a worshipper of idols. Then Morienus replied, If you admit that what I say is true, then you must also acknowledge that the soul from which these words proceed is true and honest. For from truth comes truth, and from falsehood comes falsehood. From the eternal comes the eternal, from the transient comes the transient, from good comes good, and from evil comes evil. Then the king said, O Morienus, I have heard much about your steadfastness and faith. For this reason, I greatly admire you, especially now that I see and hear that these things are indeed true. This therefore was the reason why many to see you and also to hear you, whom I have long desired. For I wish that among certain matters you would instruct me with some other teachings as evidence and also enlighten me. Then Morienus said to him, O king, may Almighty God guide you to what is better, for I am not someone worthy of great admiration. I am merely one among the sons of Adam. We all came from one, and in time, though by different paths, we shall return to one. The long course of time brings change, confuses man within the limits of time, and transforms him. Yet I am not yet so changed that others who came before me should be considered more unchangeable. However, the final transformation is followed by a dreadful death, beyond which no punishment is deemed greater. For before the union of body and soul, and after their separation, the soul awaits a punishment harsher than any death. Yet the Almighty Creator, who creates and forms all things from himself, may he always be our help. Then the king said to him, O Morienus, from what you have just said, I see that you think I intend to mock you. According to this thought, though you appear old and wise, you are more deserving of ridicule than of praise. After this the king summoned me and said, O good servant Galip, go and seek for this man a home, one that is beautiful, richly adorned, and near the palace. At the same time, also seek out men as a follower of his faith, a learned man, an elder adorned with virtues, who would be comforted by his words and counsel, and whose spirit would rest in peace. For I saw that he seemed somewhat uneasy and had little confidence in me. Therefore, I did as the king commanded me. The king visited him daily and remained with him for several hours, conversing with and encouraging him, though he did not ask him anything about his mastery. However, as great knowledge and affection grew between them, Morienus came to trust the king greatly and placed confidence in him. The king then questioned him about the laws of the Romans and whether their laws changed with the passing of time. He also inquired about the customs of kings and consuls, as well as the histories of the Greeks. Morienus answered all of these inquiries appropriately. Thus the king loved Morienus as much as he had never loved anyone before. One day, while they were conversing together, the king said to Morienus, "O wisest of all elders, know that for a long time I have sought the mastery of Hermes, yet I have never been able to find anyone who could truly reveal it to me. Because of this, on the occasion when you secretly left our lands, after I had read the writings you had inscribed around the vessel in which the mastery was contained, and after I had understood their meaning, all those whom I had kept with me for many years because of this knowledge, I immediately ordered their heads to be cut off. Therefore, I beg you, O good elder and wisest of all, to explain to me its true nature, its form, and its substance, so that my long-held expectation may be fulfilled through you. If you do this, you shall gain not only me but all that I possess, and if you so wish, we shall return together to your homeland. From now on, I do not wish for you to have any doubts about me in any way, nor should your mind harbor any fear from any opinion." Then Morienus replied, "O good and wise king, may God guide you to what is better. Now I understand well why you have sent for me. You are in great need of me, and that is why you called me. I have come to you gladly so that I may teach you this mastery and clearly reveal to you the wondrous power of God. As for the fear you spoke of earlier, I do not fear it, nor have I ever despaired concerning you. For whoever is afraid is not perfected in truth, and especially for a wise man, it is not fitting to fear anything. For if he fears, he will quickly fall into despair, and if he despairs, his soul will waver, and he will never achieve the goal of his intention. And since I now perceive that you embrace me with great affection, and I see that you are most diligent in your inquiry, strict in your morals, and in action both pious and patient, it is not fitting for me to delay any longer in this to store away or conceal the mastery for yourself. Now, in regard to your purpose and your long inquiry, you have arrived at the easiest of all paths. Blessed be the name of the Lord forever and ever." At this, the king smiled and said, "Now I truly know that any man who lacks patience is cruelly ruined by haste, for haste is of the devil. But I am the grandson of Machoya, and the son of King Gazid. And there is no strength except with the Most High God who alone is supreme." Then Morienus said, "O good king, may God guide you to what is better. Now turn your attention to the judgment of this mastery, and you will know it well and understand it. But in its beginning and end, remember to study it diligently, for all things pertaining to it will, by the Lord's will, be more easily attained. This thing you have long sought cannot be obtained through force or wrath, nor can it be carried out that way. It is attained through patience, humility, true love, and utmost perfection. For God bestows this divine and pure knowledge upon his faithful servants, those whom he, in his marvelous power, has chosen from the beginning of creation to receive it. And when this knowledge is given to one of his faithful, he must first consider carefully to whom he will later entrust and reveal it. For this matter cannot be judged as anything other than the highest gift of God, which he grants as he wills, and to whom he wills. He entrusts it to his servants and faithful ones, and reveals it to them. Therefore it is fitting for those to whom this gift is entrusted to remain humble in all things before the Almighty God, and to be entirely subject to him." Then the king said, "Indeed we truly know and understand that there is no perfection in things without the aid of divinity and its revelation, for he alone is the most high and unchangeable." After this the king summoned me and said, "O good servant Galip, sit quickly and record in your writing all that we will now discuss among ourselves, so that it may be preserved in memory." Then Morienus said, "The Almighty Lord and Creator of all from his omnipotence has created servants who are powerless, for they cannot alter his order. That is, they cannot delay what he has appointed first, nor place ahead what he has assigned last. There is nothing they can know except through his revelation, nor can they attain anything unless he has decreed that they may obtain it, nor will they be able to retain anything unless it has been divinely bestowed upon them by the strength of the Most High God. And moreover, they cannot even govern their own souls for long, except up to the limit that God has set over them. For the Lord appoints from among his servants those whom he wills and chooses, so that they may seek this divine knowledge granted by God, and retain the knowledge they have sought within themselves. For this knowledge is that which draws its master away from the misery of this world, and leads to the knowledge of future goods. But in past times, always one after another inherited this wisdom, and after that this knowledge was nearly lost. But many books of the ancient divines remained, in which it is contained wholly true and without falsehood. Yet however no one was found who at that time could bring it into effect, because of the many and diverse names that had long been imposed upon the things related to it by the earlier sages. But I retain the truth of this matter perfectly, just as you once knew. Indeed our ancestors handed down the names of this mastery multiplied and varied. covered with the weightiest sciences, yet all were true and frequently verified. They are thought to have done this entirely because of the foolish ignorance of the unwise, so that their words would not be understood except by those judged worthy of such a great mastery. If therefore anyone finds their words, let them diligently study them until they correctly understand them. For it is not fitting for anyone to withdraw from this mastery, rather they ought to firmly place their faith and hope in the Most High God, and incessantly implore Him, so that they may accomplish this divine and marvelous work. Likewise, they should call upon Almighty God and seek His assistance, so that God may turn him toward better and more beautiful things, and make him attain the knowledge of this mastery along a straight path, without any deviation successfully. Then the king said, Now if you please, O Morienus, let these words and commands be sufficient to say. For I retain them well, and I will observe them as best I can, and especially since you are old and wise, do not neglect to reveal this mastery to me. Therefore, explain to me this which I have long desired, with the easiest explanation, so that the seriousness of its study does not long confuse me in this matter. First of all, then, explain and tell me from its beginning, so that any inverted order may be cast far away from our discussion. To this Morienus replied, Indeed, I will relate to you the matter arranged in order, but do not hesitate to inquire further about what you wish from now on. Here begin the questions of King Calid, and the responses of Morienus, concerning all matters by which the entire efficacy of the mastery of Hermes is confirmed. King Calid, O Morienus, first I wish to ask what and of what kind is the principal substance and matter of this thing, and whether there are many or several, or if it is composed of only one. Morienus, however this matter, until it is discerned through its effect, is more surely confirmed by the testimony of many. But before I present to you the more ancient testimonies, I will explain what we have often confirmed concerning its principal substance and material. And if you carefully examine what I say to you in the testimonies of the ancients, you will clearly recognize that we all agree on one thing, and that everything we say is true. Therefore, concerning what you have asked, take this. The first and principal substance and material of this thing is one, and from it there is one, and since it exists, nothing is added or diminished from it. Behold, you now have what you asked for, but now I will present to you the testimonies of the ancients, so that we may all be judged to be in agreement. Hercules, a certain wise king and philosopher, when questioned by some of his people, said, This magisterium proceeds first from one root, which later expands into multiple things, and then returns again to one, and know that it is necessary to receive air. Arsacanus too, a philosopher, said, The four elements, namely, heat, cold, moisture and dryness, proceed from one source, and some things are composed from these same elements. Among these four some are as roots, and some are as things composed from these roots, and those which are roots are water and fire, but those which are composed from them are earth and air. Again, Arsacanus to Maria, he said, Our water above our land has supremacy, which is great, clear and pure, for from the density of water, earth is created. Hermes, alternatively, another said, that is, Moses, that all things proceed from the earth and return to it, and Hermes said, just as all things come from one, etc. Also said, Earth is the mother of the elements, from the earth they proceed, and to the earth they return. Hermes again said, Just as all things proceed from one, so my magistery is formed from one substance and matter. And just as the four elements are contained within the human body, so God created them fixed and distinct, yet joined together, collected as well and diffused throughout the whole body, because it unites the body as one, and holds it together in unity, and yet each individual part carries out a function different from the work of the other. And although they are in one body, they have different colors and different dominions. In the same way, this magistery must be understood. Many similar testimonies exist. Philosophers have spoken of this magistery, some of which we will mention later. King Calid, how and by what reasoning can it be that the root of this magistery is one, and its substance and matter are one, when among the philosophers the names of its root are found to be many and multiplied? Morienus, indeed its root names have been multiplied, but if you examine those things stated above in the correct order, you will find one root, substance and matter. Hercules indeed said to certain of his disciples, The little stone of the date palm is nourished by the palm, and the palm grows from its own stone, from whose very root many branches sprout, multiplying and increasing their number because of it. Hermes then said, Observe the completed red, and the red diminished from its redness, and all redness. Consider also the completed yellow, and the yellow diminished from its yellowness, and all yellowness, and likewise the completed black, and the black diminished from its blackness, and all blackness. In the same way, an ear of wheat proceeds from a grain, and many branches extend from a single tree, even though the tree originates from its own seed. A certain wise man, who for the sake of God had abandoned the whole world, presents us with a similar example. For he said, The first creation of man is from seed, and from one grain 100 grains are produced, and from a sprout a great tree grows. And from one man, similarly, a woman is drawn forth, from whom often many sons and daughters are born, differing in color, appearance, or outward form. Likewise the same wise man said, "Consider the tailor who is accustomed to sewing garments, since from cloth he makes an undergarment, or a robe which it combines any other of which, of course, the parts receive different names which even if considered naturally are found to be formed from the cloth itself. For a bed sheet, sleeves and gores, although as regards the parts of clothing, they have different names, still, their principal material is cloth. And also from this cloth, the threads by which the parts of the garment are joined into one are drawn out, not because the cloth itself needs something different from itself for this purpose. In a similar manner, this mastery exists as one thing by itself and needs nothing else. For among philosophers this mastery is hidden and concealed, and wherever it is found, it is named by 1,000 names. It is also sealed, and open only to the wise, for the wise seek out this mastery diligently, and having sought it, they find it, and having found it, they both love and adorn it. But fools mock it, and among them it is considered of little value, or, more truly, regarded as nothing. For they do not know what it is, and these many names are those which the wise have assigned to it in their books, one of which is sperma, which when transformed, changes into blood, and finally it coagulates and becomes like a piece of mixed flesh, and in this manner until with another creature succeeding it, it necessarily becomes human. Among these names there is also a certain name, such as palm, just as from the color of apples its nature, and from the color of its elements, before they reach their perfection. Another name for it is, for example, the pomegranate tree, and likewise wheat, milk, and very many other names, all of which have one root. But according to their different effects, different colors, and different natures, they impose many and various names upon the same thing. As Herizartem said the philosopher, "I speak the truth, that nothing else has led the practitioners of this mastery into error, except for its variety and the multitude of its names. But if someone rightly understands that these names are nothing but colors appearing in combination, they will not stray from the path of this mastery." King Calid, I greatly desire to understand whether these colors you previously mentioned, namely, those that change from one to another, are altered in a single disposition or preparation, or in two, or even in many such transformations. Morienus, in a single preparation or form, the material changes in this way, but the more fire alters its color, the more numerous its names become, wherefore the philosopher said to Udison, "I will show you that the wise did not multiply the dispositions or preparations of this mastery for any other reason than to instruct the wise and completely blind the unwise. For this mastery has one single name, and this name properly belongs to it is assigned. Thus it also has one disposition and also one linear path. And in this way, although the wise changed its names and words, they still wanted to understand only one thing, one path, and one disposition. Therefore, O good king, it should be enough for you to inquire and investigate these things up to this point. For the wise men who came before us named many compositions, many weights and many colors, and thus they allegorized their words over the common people. Yet they did not lie, but spoke according to what seemed good to them, and according to what they understood among themselves, so that this too might be hidden from others. King Calid, it should be enough that I have already spoken to you about its nature and substance, but now regarding its color, I clearly see a difference, for I do not want you to draw any comparisons with me using allegory or similarity. Morienus, it was the custom of the wise to always make their assos from it and with it. Assos in Arabic is interpreted as alumen in Latin. And they also used this before they dyed anything with it. O good king, these things I have set forth should be enough for you, or do we return to older testimonies? If you desire an example, accept the words of the philosopher Dante as follows, for he says, "Our own Leto, although at first it is red, is still useless, but if redness is turned into white, it will be of great value." Because of this, the same Dante says to Eudes, "O Eudes, this matter is thus firm and entirely well established, for the wise have spoken of it in this way. Now we have removed the blackness, and with salt and anatron, that is saltpeter and almizadir, whose nature is cold and dry, we have fixed the whiteness. Therefore we give it the name boreza, which in Arabic is called tinkar." But the saying of the philosopher Dante is confirmed through the words of Hermes. Hermes also says at first there is blackness, then with salt and anatron, whiteness follows, and at first it was red, and in the end it is white, and thus its blackness is entirely removed, and then it turns into a very bright and shining red. Maria, who was the sister of Moses, whom some say discovered the bath which is called Maria. Maria also says, "When Leiton is burned with alzebric, that is, sulfur and softness is poured over it, so that its heat is removed, then all its obscurity and blackness is taken away from it, and thus it is converted into the purest gold." Likewise the philosopher Dante says, "If Leiton is burned with sulfur, and softness is frequently poured over it, its nature will be transformed from good to better by the help of God." Another also says, "When pure Leiton is cooked for a long time until it shines like the eye of a fish, its usefulness will become apparent, and then know that it will return to its natural state and color." And another similarly says that the more something is washed, the clearer and better it appears. Replied, "If it is not washed, it will not appear clear, nor will it return to its color." And likewise Maria says, there is nothing that can remove its obscurity from brass or take away its color. But azoc is like its covering. First, when it is boiled down, it colors it and makes it white, and then, azoc dominates the brass, that is, it makes it wine-colored or red. Another philosopher also says, azoc cannot substantially remove its color from brass or change it, except as much as it affects the sight. Or the brass removes from azoc its essential whiteness, for within it is a marvelous strength, which surpasses all colors. For as soon as colors are washed away, and its blackness and impurity are removed, so that it appears white, azoc indeed dominates the brass and makes it ruddy. Dovtim, another philosopher, also says, everything is nothing except from and with itself, and every tincture proceeds from its own likeness. Adarmath, likewise a wise man and philosopher, says, all the names of these things and their likenesses are not denied by the ancients, nor are they changed, except so that you may understand that the beginning of this thing is testified to by its end, and its end is testified to by its beginning. And that you may know that this whole is nothing but one thing, which indeed has a father and a mother, and its father and the substance nourishes and sustains it, not because it can in any way differ from its father or mother. Udison also says, how can it happen that a species is tinged by its own kind? Dftin, likewise a philosopher, says, from where indeed does it proceed, and into what does it return? King Calid. Thus far we have sufficiently discussed the nature of this kind of stone and its color. Now let us discuss its natural composition, its touch, and also its weight and taste. Morienus. The touch of this stone is soft, and there is greater softness in it than in its own body. Its weight is quite heavy, and its taste is very sweet, and its nature is airy. King Calid. What then is its odor before and after its preparation? Morienus. Before preparation it is very heavy and foul-smelling, and after preparation, according to what the wise say. Indeed, this water removes odor from a dead and already inanimate body, for its smell is bad and similar to the stench of graves. Thus the wise also say, whoever whitens the soul, raises it upwards, preserves the body well, removes all darkness from it, and extracts the foul odor from it, will be able to place it into the body. And at the moment of conjunction, the greatest miracles will appear. Hence a certain philosopher, while in the presence of Maria, together when they had gathered together, they said to her, blessed are you, Mary, because the divine secret, hidden and always adorned, has been revealed to you. King Calid. Explain to me the nature of changes, that is, how what is below ascends above, and by what reasoning, and how what is above descends below, and in what way one of them is joined to the other so that they are mixed together. What also is it that causes them to be mixed? How also does the blessed water come to water and irrigate, and cleanse from its foul odor? For this is an odor, which is likened to the odor of tombs, in which even the dead are buried. Morienus. This indeed is a matter about which the philosopher Azinabam rightly shines, for he says, by what names can this thing be naturally called? But he says, naturally this thing is called ulfi, that is, an animal. And tufi, later its odor becomes sweet and good, and nothing of darkness or foulness remains in it. King Calid. Let this suffice for us from now on regarding such a common inquiry. But now I wish to ask whether this thing is very cheap or is it found to be valuable. You therefore must answer me truthfully. Morienus. See what the wise man has said, namely that this mastery is accustomed to be made from a single thing. Therefore you should apply this to your mind and consider it within yourself, nor should there be anything that contradicts you in this matter. Know then, when they had gathered together, they said to her, blessed are you, Mary, because the divine secret, hidden and always adorned, has been revealed to you. King Calid. Explain to me the nature of transformations, that is, how that which is below ascends above, and by what reasoning, and likewise, how that which is above descends below, and how one of these things joins with the other so that they mix together. Also, what is it that causes them to mix? How does blessed water come to moisten and irrigate, and to cleanse from its foul odor? For there is an odor here, which is likened to the smell of tombs, in which even the dead are buried. Morienus. This indeed is a matter about which the philosopher Azinabam speaks rightly, for he says, Ostiensbe, by what names can this thing be naturally called? And he replies that naturally this thing is called ulfi, that is, an animal, and afterward, its scent becomes pleasant and good, and nothing of darkness or foulness remains in it. King Calid. Let this common inquiry on such a matter now suffice for us. But now I wish to ask whether this thing is found to be very cheap or precious. Therefore answer me truthfully on this matter. Morienus. See what the wise man has said, that this mastery is accustomed to being made from one single thing. Therefore take this into your mind and reflect upon it, and let there be nothing that contradicts you in this matter. Another, sulfur and orpiment are burned, and in combustion they do not last long, and ozone always lasts longer in combustion, etc. Know that it happens that sulfur zarnet, that is, orpiment, is quickly burned, and by combustion it is quickly consumed. But azoc endures combustion for a longer time, for all substances applied to fire are consumed more quickly. How then do you expect something good from that which is quickly consumed by the fire's combustion and is burned and reduced to charcoal? You must also know that neither grass nor stone is suitable for this magistery, but consider whether you can properly direct the pure and most refined substance, otherwise your work will be ineffective. The wise men have determined, and said that if you find what you seek in filth, take it, but if you do not find it in filth, withdraw your hand from your purse. For anything that is bought at a high price is deceptive and useless in this art. This explanation, then, should suffice for you in this place. But beware of spending anything on this magistery, for once it is completed, you will not need further expenditure. Thus Dante Philosopher says, I however advise you not to spend anything on the weights of substances, especially in the mastery of gold. He also says, whoever seeks something other than this stone for this magistery will be like a man attempting to climb a ladder without steps, and when he is unable, he will fall flat on his face to the ground. But to this, King Calid, that which you mention, is it rare, or is there much of it to be found? Morienus, it is nothing other than, as the wise man says, for both the rich X, namely X, and the poor, for the generous and the miserly, for the one who walks and the one who sits. For it is cast into the streets and trampled in filth, and many have already dug in the filth to extract it, and they have been deceived. But the wise have recognized this thing itself, and they have tested it many times as one single thing, for it contains within itself the four elements, and dominates them. King Calid, in what place or in what mine is this thing sought until it is found? Another, that which is fixed in you is created by God, and wherever you are, it remains inseparable from you, and everything created by God from which this thing is separated, immediately perishes. At this Morienus fell silent, and with his head lowered, he pondered for a long time what he could respond to the king. At last he raised himself up and said, O king, I truly confess to you that this thing is more firmly established in its creation by divine will, for everything created by God cannot exist without it. King Calid, you must explain what you mean by this. Morienus said, the disciples of Hercules questioned him and said, O good master, the wise men who lived before us wrote books explaining this magistery and left them to their sons and disciples. We beg you, master, not to keep silent about the explanation of this magistery, but rather to reveal to us what was left obscure by the ancients without delay. Another, that which is more firmly fixed in you is created by God, and wherever you are, it remains inseparable from you, and everything created by God, from which this thing is separated, immediately perishes. Then he said, O sons of wisdom, know that God, the most high and blessed Creator, made the world from four dissimilar elements and placed man among these elements as its greatest ornament. King Calid, explain to me further regarding this matter that you have just mentioned. Morienus, why should I tell you much? This thing is extracted from you, even its mine is within you, for they find it within you, and to speak more truthfully, they receive it from you. And when you have tested it, your love and affection for it will grow, and know that this is true and will undoubtedly remain so. King Calid, have you ever known another stone that resembles this one, and that by its effect and power can accomplish the same thing? Morienus, I do not know of any other stone that resembles this one, nor one that has its effect. For within this stone the four elements are contained, it is likened to the world and to the composition of the world, and in the world, no other stone is found that resembles it, whether in creation or in nature. Therefore, whoever seeks another stone for this magistery will completely waste his efforts. There is still something more for you to learn, namely the beginning of this magistery. For I will remove you from all error. Therefore, see that you do not overlook this root, nor ever seek its changes, for you will find neither profit nor the good you seek in it. I also warn you to observe carefully those things which have been said above. King Calid, O Morienus, now explain to me the nature of this arrangement, for surely God will aid us in this matter. Morienus, I will tell you, according to what has been handed down to me by the ancients, you ask well. Therefore, in the direction of this preparation, you must arrange these parts of the process rationally in their proper order, and in no way omit them. The first of these is union, the second, conception, the third, pregnancy, the fourth, birth, the fifth, nourishment. If therefore there is no union, there will be no conception, and if there is no conception, there will be no pregnancy, and if there is no pregnancy, birth will not follow in any way. For this is the order of this process, which is likened to the creation of man. For the Almighty Creator, the Most High and Great, whose name is forever blessed, created man not from constituent parts as a house is, which consists of its own structural components. For there is no thing that constitutes man's being in the same way. A house, however, consists of its constituent parts, such as the wall, the roof, and the foundation. These are the parts of a house and are called created things. But man is not constituted in this way, for he is a creature. For man, since his essence undergoes change, seems to pass from one state to a better one. And thus man always persists in creation, appearing to be very different from created things. And thus it proceeds from day to day, and from month to month, until the Most High and Great Creator completes his creation, in a determined time, within specific days. For although the four elements were first present in seed, yet God the Creator has assigned it a definite time in which it may be completed, and once it is completed, it is strengthened, along with itself. Such indeed is the power and wisdom of the Most High God. You should also know, O good king, that this magistery is nothing other than a mystery, and the secret of secrets of the Most High and Great God. For he entrusted this secret to his prophets, whose souls indeed he placed in his paradise. But if the wise men who came after them had not discovered their explanations regarding the nature of the vessel in which it is contained, they would never have reached the perfection of this magistery. Therefore, commit this to your memory, for I have already pointed out that this magistery does not greatly differ from the creation of man. Now I also tell you that nothing ever came to life or was created by nature, nor did anything grow, except after putrefaction and its transformation. Hence, the wise man says that the entire strength of this magistery is found only after putrefaction. For he says, if there is no putrefaction, it cannot be melted or dissolved, and if it is not dissolved, it will return to nothingness. King Calid, what then will this be after putrefaction? Morienus, after putrefaction it will reach that stage where the Almighty God and Most High Creator of all will bring to completion the sought-after composition. Know therefore that this magistery requires 2 creations and 2 preparations. These are so interconnected that when one of them is completed, the other then begins. And when the latter is completed, the entire magistery is finished. King Calid, how then does this magistery require 2 creations and 2 preparations, when earlier you said that its substance and its path persist as one and are linear? Morienus, what I said is true, for this entire magistery consists of one thing and one path. Indeed, its one disposition is the same as the other. King Calid, what then is this disposition, with which, as you said a moment ago, the entire magistery can be completed? Morienus, O good king, may God guide you to something better. This is the disposition that indeed cannot be completed by human hands. Many wise men have struggled with its difficulty. For they have said, if someone through his knowledge discovers this disposition, he will easily bring the entire magistery to completion with his wisdom. But whoever does not find it through his wisdom will remain completely ignorant of the magistery. King Calid, what then is this wondrous disposition? Morienus, if the wise carefully examine the things that have been said, you will easily be able to understand it, for they have spoken about it. For this disposition is the transformation of natures, and a marvelous commixture of the hot and moist with the cold and dry, in a subtle arrangement. King Calid, since this disposition is not performed by human hands, what then is the thing itself with which it can be accomplished? Morienus, this disposition is achieved according to what the wise man has said, who declares that azok and fire cleanse and purify Leighton, and completely remove its darkness. For the wise man also says, if you correctly arrange the method of fire, azok and fire by God's ordinance will be sufficient for you. Thus the White Slayer says, whiten the Leighton, and tear up your books lest your hearts be corrupted. King Calid, is this disposition before or after putrefaction? Morienus, the disposition precedes putrefaction, but such a disposition does not exist at all. King Calid, then what is it? Morienus, our entire operation is nothing other than the extraction of water from the earth and the pouring of this water over the earth until the earth itself putrefies. For this earth putrefies with water and is purified, and when it has been cleansed with divine assistance, the entire magistery will be guided. For this is the arrangement of the wise, which is the third part of the entire magistery. You must also know that if an impure body is not perfectly purified, or if you have purified it, but not dried it, nor rendered it properly whitened, nor infused it with its soul, nor removed all its foulness, until, after its purification, the tincture descends into it, you will have directed nothing at all of this magistery. You must also know that the soul quickly enters its own body, but never joins with a foreign body. King Calid, O Creator, may he always be our aid. Now explain to me the second disposition, whether it is in fact the end of the previous disposition. Morienus, it is as you say, for when you have purified the impure body, as has already been said, then afterward add 1/4 part of ferment to it. For the ferment of gold is gold, just as the ferment of bread is bread. When you have added it, place it in the sun for digestion until these two are combined into one body. Then, under God's blessing, begin to wash it. For this washing, take 1 part of the mortal substance and cook it for 3 days. Take care not to forget or shorten any of its prescribed days. Its fire must burn steadily and evenly, so that it neither grows too strong nor weakens. Let its fire be gentle and mild, burning evenly throughout its days, otherwise great harm will follow. After 17 nights the vessel in which this everything is cooked in stages, and the water that you find in it should be extracted, and another added in its place. This should be done 3 times. The aforementioned vessel should always remain fixed in its furnace, until the entire period of the fermentation of gold is completed, and until it is directed X to the 8th part of its tincture. When it has been extracted after nights, and then has been well dried, in Arabic, this is called vexir. Then, take the cleansed and prepared body, and carefully place it upon the furnace, so that there, in its vessel, you may water it daily with 1/4 part of the mortal substance, which you should have with you at that time, while also ensuring that the flame of the fire does not touch the aforementioned vessel, for otherwise everything would be ruined. When all of this has been completed, the aforementioned vessel should be placed in a large furnace with great care, and fire should be kindled over its opening. This fire should burn steadily for 2 days and as many nights, without any increase or decrease in intensity. Once all these steps are completed, remove it from the furnace along with everything inside it, for with divine assistance, the repetition of the art is completed. King Calid. Thus as you say we shall do likewise, may the name of the Lord be blessed. Morienus. O good king, you must also know that the entire perfection of this magistery consists in the capture and union of harmonious bodies. For even these bodies by a natural artifice, they are substantially joined together, they harmonize, they are fused, and they also receive one another. For they correct and direct each other, so that under the strength of fire they may appear more beautiful. Thus if the seeker of wisdom fully understands the capture of these bodies, their purification, their dissolution, and their necessary arrangement, as well as their mixing and digestion, he will have complete knowledge. He should then know the quantity of their fire, the structure of his furnace, and the ignition of his fire specifically, in which part of the furnace the fire should be lit, also the number of their days, and the measurement of their weights. For if he handles all these things with foresight and reason, his purpose will be fulfilled with divine assistance. Thus, all haste must be far removed from the artisan himself. Instead, foresight, reason, and firm expectation should be applied. Now, what most closely unites these bodies is blood, for it and that fire enlivens and joins them, and from all these elements, it forms one body. Therefore, a gentle fire should be applied for a longer time, so that it remains steady throughout its days. For when the heat of the fire quickly spreads through the body, it consumes the body in a rapid combustion. For if Eudica, that is fex glass, is applied to them, it will change the bodies into earth and protect them from all combustion. For once bodies no longer retain their souls, they are quickly burned. Eudica is indeed well suited to all bodies, for it vivifies and prepares them, and protects them from all combustion. For it introduces certain parts of them into others, and after they are infused, it defends them against excessive heat. And when you wish to seek Eudica, seek it in glass vessels. When you have found it, store it away, and do nothing with it until, meaning, wait until it becomes acidic, and there is no unleavened part remaining. Otherwise your intention would be completely frustrated. Foul earth quickly receives white sparks and prevents the blood from being damaged in the decoction. For the power of blood and its strength is exceedingly great, therefore, the blood must be broken so that it does not obstruct or hinder the process. This breaking should occur after it has been whitened. What remains from the colors then turns to blackness. By colors I mean the veins of minerals that were first exuded, appearing as if they were newly formed, which is relevant to this magistery. At the beginning you may not perceive the truth, as it is entirely deceptive and useless. The seeker should not think otherwise than of the house of the Most High and great God, who entrusted to his own, whose name must always be blessed. But you, O good king, must now be entirely focused in your mind, so that you may hear and understand what I will now tell you. King Calid, speak as you wish, for I stand before you with attentive ears. Morienus. He speaks of the names of the substances. O good king, you must first and foremost know with absolute certainty that red smoke, yellow smoke, and white smoke, and the green lion, and almagra, and immunity from death, and the clear substance, and blood, and Eudica, and foul earth, these are the things in which the entire efficacy of this magistery resides. Without these it cannot be properly handled in any way. King Calid. Explain these names to me, Morienus. I will expound them at the end of the book, for concerning those things whose names I now reveal before you I am aware of the magistery, so that what we have already spoken may be proven through the effect of the thing itself. For this is the root of this science, namely, that whoever wishes to impart it must first receive its doctrine from a master, and afterward the master must frequently explain it in the presence of his disciple. There are, however, some who seek this knowledge in vain for a long time, yet never find it. But you, always act in accordance with what you see me doing. And do not seek anything outside of this magistery, for if you do, without a doubt you will go astray. Moreover, this is a secret of the magistery, which I have briefly compiled here and presented to you, namely, that one part of this substance transforms 1,000 parts of silver into the purest gold. These things that have already been said should suffice for this magistery, but there are still certain things without which it cannot be accomplished. And you must also know that the intention of man is to attain this divine and pure knowledge, which there are, however, many obstacles to this science. For as the wise man says, there is a great distance between the wise man and the fool, and between the blind and the seeing. For one who has fully understood both the arrangement and the proof of this magistery is not like one who still persists in its inquiry through books. For books have indeed been written in symbolic form about this art, most of which appear very obscure, and the knowledge is interconnected and can only be understood by its composers. But this is a science that above all others must be inquired into, since through it we may arrive at another even more marvelous. King Calid. But all that I declare is clearly true, and its truth flourishes in its explanation and shines forth admirably. Here begins the arrangement of the wise, for the preparation of the impure body, before the elixir is placed upon it, before it has attained its hardened effect, and before it is whitened, and before the soul is infused into it. Morienus says because the elixir, unless from a well-purified body, and not foul, so that its tincture when it enters upon it, when it enters, it appears more beautiful, but it is not received. and this is the first disposition. Begin therefore with the help of God, and first ensure that the red smoke takes on the white smoke, and pour both downward and combine them so that, in their mixture from both, an equal weight is applied. When these are mixed, they should be placed in a vessel of spirit, in the measure of nearly 1 pound, perfectly positioned, whose opening should be properly sealed with bitumen. For there are winds in them, which if they are not retained within the vessel will escape, and thus the magistery will be destroyed. Bitumen, however, is that which in the books of the philosophers is called mud, in which before sealing you should add a small amount of salt, so that it may be more firmly set, and so that it may resist combustion by fire for a longer period. Then you should heat the furnace. In another manuscript it is added, with sheep dung, or with olive leaves. Then once it is heated, the said vessel, along with everything contained within it, should be elevated in it. This elevation should take place after sunset, and there it should remain until the day cools. Afterward you should extract the vessel itself and break it. If what you had placed inside has combined into a single body, resembling a stone, take it and grind it well and tantorize it. When you have done this, take another vessel whose bottom is round, and place inside it this finely ground and well tantorized material, and seal the mouth of the vessel all around with the bitumen of the philosophers. Then, place it in the furnace of the philosophers. You should construct, in which you ignite the philosophical fire in the manner of the philosophers, so that it continues burning equally for XXXI days. Now the philosophical fire is such that its material is divided into 2 parts, for either its material is composed of sheep dung or of olive leaves, for nothing ensures an equal and enduring combustion better than these. Thus, when the aforementioned days have passed, remove the designated vessel from the furnace, and dry out whatever you find inside. Afterward, take 1 part of it and mix it with 10 parts of the purified substance, and again take 1 part of the purified substance and mix it with a 10th part of the world, in the same manner, and so forth. Following this order and proportion, so that they are combined into one, once mixed into one, make from it the elixir, which is that which is dissipated. And if any whiteness remains in it, and it is well fixed, and you find no retreat due to burning by fire, then you have already completed 2 parts of this magistery. This is therefore the method by which the white is most recently joined with the impure, and beyond this method no other is found. For the soul quickly enters its own body, whereas if you attempt to join it to a foreign body, you will labor in vain. For truth itself is more luminous. King Calid, all that you say is true, as we have now seen, and may God receive the souls of his prophets into his hand. You should construct, in which you ignite the philosophical fire in the manner of the philosophers, so that it continues burning equally for 21 days. Now the philosophical fire is such that its material is divided into 2 parts, for either its material is composed of sheep dung or of olive leaves, for nothing ensures an equal and enduring combustion better than these. Thus, when the aforementioned days have passed, remove the designated vessel from the furnace, and dry out whatever you find inside. Afterward, take 1 part of it and mix it with 10 parts of the purified substance, and again take 1 part of the purified substance and mix it with a 10th part of the world, in the same manner, and so forth. Following this order and proportion, so that they are combined into one, once mixed into one, make from it the elixir, which is that which is dissipated. And if any whiteness remains in it, and it is well fixed, and you find no retreat due to burning by fire, then you have already completed 2 parts of this magistery. This is therefore the method by which the white is most recently joined with the impure, and beyond this method no other is found. For the soul quickly enters its own body, whereas if you attempt to join it to a foreign body, you will labor in vain. For truth itself is more luminous. King Calid, all that you say is true, as we have now seen, and may God receive the souls of his prophets into his hand. Here begins the second arrangement, from the sayings of Morienus the Roman, which he had with King Calid, the son of Egazid, the son of Medoia, in another reading as Mokiah, and previously called Mokoia. Morienus said, "Take white smoke in the green lion, and almagra red in the impurity of the dead, and dissolve all these things, and when they are dissolved, make them ascend, and after their ascension, unite them into one, in such a way that for every 1 part of the green lion, 3 parts of the impurity of the dead are added. Similarly, take 1 part of the white smoke and 2 of almagra, and place all these into a green vessel where they shall be cooked. The mouth of this vessel, however, should be tightly sealed according to what was previously mentioned. Afterward, place this in the sun and let it dry there, and when it has dried, apply the elixir to it. Then finally, pour over it the water of blood, as much as will float upon it. After 3 days and nights, water it with foul water, taking care not to reduce any of its days, nor allow its fire to be extinguished, nor let it increase by burning, nor weaken by diminishing its charring. Thus, after 17 nights have passed, you will open the said vessel and extract the water you find inside, and then replace it with another foul water, so that specifically, this must be done for 3 nights. Also taking care that the vessel is never removed from its furnace, the application of foul water should be done once on each of the 3 nights. Then, after 21 nights have passed, remove the vessel from the furnace and dry out the elixir that is inside it. Afterward, take the white body, in which the white has already been fixed, and place it in a very small vessel, which corresponds to the size of the magistery furnace, which should be built accordingly. Then, firmly attach that vessel to the furnace, so that the flame of the fire does not burn or touch it. As for the elixir that we mentioned earlier should be cast, let it be done in such a way that if you throw a portion of it onto the white body, you should cast 11 parts, and after these are mixed, for each ounce of this combined body, throw in only a quarter part of 1 drachm of iutica. Having done this, place this vessel into a great furnace and leave it there for 2 days and the same number of nights, over its top. Let the fire burn continuously for all those days and nights without going out. When these days and nights are complete, extract whatever you find inside the vessel, and praise the Most High and Great Creator for what He has granted you. Here begins the explanation of the species. Morienus said, O good and most wise king, this is the explanation of the species that pertain to this magistery, which indeed our predecessors named with many and various names, so that those who sought this magistery unworthily would completely stray from its truth. Know therefore that the impure body is lead, which by another name is called Afrop. The pure body, however, is tin, which is also called Arena X, the Lion X another reading. The green lion is glass, Almagra X is also Lalek, though earlier we might have called it red earth X another reading, Amal. Likewise, blood is orpiment, and foul earth is foul sulfur, but Utica is the secret of all these things, which by another name is called Mosh Hakumia, which in Latin can be called torch of glass or the impurity of glass. 10th Now, the smoke X there are 2 types, red smoke is red orpiment, white smoke is living silver, and yellow smoke is yellow sulfur. Behold, I now express to you the names of the species, of which 3 alone are sufficient for the entire magistery, that is, white smoke, the green lion, and foul water. Thus you have 3 species, and do not tell or reveal their composition to anyone, but let fools remain ignorant regarding this magistery. Marginal notes translation. X another reading the green lion, X another reading Amal, X another reading there are 2 types. Morienus said, O good and most wise king, this is the explanation of the species that pertain to this magistery, which indeed our predecessors named with many and various names, so that those who sought this magistery unworthily would completely stray from its truth. Know therefore that the impure body is lead, which by another name is called Afrop. The pure body, however, is tin, which is also called Arena also Lalek. The lion, or in another reading, the green lion, is glass, Almagra is also Lalek, though earlier we might have called it red earth another reading, Amal. Likewise, blood is orpiment, and foul earth is foul sulfur, but Utica is the secret of all these things, which by another name is called Mosh Hakumia, which in Latin can be called torch of glass or the impurity of glass. Now, the smoke. There are 2 types, yellow and red. Red smoke is red orpiment, white smoke is living silver, and yellow smoke is yellow sulfur. Behold, I now express to you the names of the species, of which 3 alone are sufficient for the entire magistery, that is, white smoke, the green lion, and foul water. Thus you have 3 species, and do not tell or reveal their composition to anyone, but let fools remain ignorant regarding this magistery. It is tempting to seek something else, and in seeking to go astray, because they will not reach its effect, until the sun and the moon are brought together into one body, which cannot happen before the command of God. For some believe that the secret of this magistery is earth, or stone, or wine, or egg, or blood, or urine, or even vinegar, and by themselves they often grind all these things, cook them, extract from their decoction, and bury the extract. For they believe, according to their opinion, that they are doing the right thing, so that their error may bring them comfort, and they do not despair of finding what they seek. But I know that earth and stone and all these things are useless for the magistery and lead to a bad outcome. You must also know this, that the greatest efficacy of this work depends on its fire. For with it minerals are adapted, and evil spirits are held within their bodies. Its fire too is its entire nature, the nature of this thing and the perfect proof. Whatever you accomplish in this magistery, if you do not find unity in its beginning, it is useless. For what good can be hoped for, if the thing itself does not act, nor remain in the world? Thus it must be reduced into one body. But if you handle these things according to what we have said, with the help of God your intention will be fulfilled. Therefore, what we have said, understand well and entrust what you understand to memory, and in its proper order, that arrangement, frequently study their arrangement. For frequent study of it will show you its straighter path. Likewise, know that the greatest root of this work is in the investigation of the species, which are the best suited for this magistery. For each mineral belongs to many kinds. Concerning this also, since you asked about white smoke, you must know that white smoke is a tincture, and also the soul of these dissolved bodies and also of the dead, whose souls we have already extracted, and then rejoined to their bodies. For every body, when it lacks a soul, will be dark and obscure, and white smoke is that which flows into the body like a soul, so that it completely removes its blackness and its impurity, consolidates the bodies into one, and multiplies their water. For its impurity multiplies, and its impurity is black and very light, and therefore when its blackness is removed, its whiteness is strengthened, and its water is multiplied, and its beauty becomes more apparent. and the tincture then appears in it more clearly that it will operate. If all these things have been properly handled, the tincture will work well in it, and the purest and most reddish gold will emerge, than which no better or purer can be found. For this reason some call this gold or even Roman ethes. This also I want you to know, since if white smoke did not exist, thus the gold of ethes, the pure alchemy, could be perpetually useful. This is also the chapter of this magistery, and almost its entire direction. But if at any time alchemy is completed, one part of it should be placed among 9 parts of silver, because the whole will be converted into the purest gold of 1,000 parts. May God therefore be blessed, amen, through all ages of ages. Here ends the Book of Alchemy, translated from Arabic into Latin, in the year 1182, in the month of February, and on its 11th day. Chrysorrhemon, or On the Art of Alchemy, dialogue, which demonstrates that the most illustrious actions of this science are consistent with reason and natural principles, but exposes the dreams and nonsense of impostors and deceivers, in Hanno on the Main, published by Guilielmus Antonius, 1593. The speakers are Chrysophilus, Theophrastus, Chrysophilus. I cannot sufficiently lament that perpetual and universal misery of mankind, since all those things, even the mere shadows of good fortune, are so difficult and entangled that scarcely 1 in 1,000 can obtain them. And when finally attained, they swiftly flee from us. But on the other hand, those things which are bound with horror, dangers, and every heap of evils so constantly threaten us that they might be judged to have conspired against humanity's destruction. For in an instant we are cast down, overwhelmed by misery, poverty, dangers, illness, and pain. Yet to be happy, to be enriched, to be healed, requires many years, and to be free from need is hardly granted to any century. Indeed, as far as I am concerned, from the very beginning of my life I must confess that I desired nothing more than to become exceedingly rich, and the thirst for gold has completely consumed me. Yet, I have not fully obtained the method of acquiring it. Although I despair of ever attaining my desire, I am willing to try anything, and the very art that the common people call alchemy, which I had long abandoned, I shall now take up again, with the favor of Mercury. But I see Theophrastus wandering over there, Chrysophilus, a man, if ever Germany has produced one, an absolute master of this art. If I can persuade him to my view, so that he may assist me in this endeavor, I shall be without a doubt the happiest of men. Greetings, above all, my friend Theophrastus. Theophrastus, greetings to you as well, my witty friend. But why do you wander here alone? What is it that you are murmuring to yourself so anxiously? I have been watching you for some time now, not without great amusement, throwing about your arms and head, flashing your fingers, kicking your feet. I thought you had been seized by Bacchic frenzy. Chrysophilus, not by Bacchus, good sir, but by the enthusiasm of Pluto I am struck. Theophrastus, why do you murmur of Pluto? Let us consign Pluto to the gates of Pluto, as they say, and devote ourselves to a tranquil life. Chrysophilus, with you as my guide, I might hope to attain peace of mind. My salvation is in your hands. If you are willing to assist me, I trust I shall soon accomplish it, so that we may become men of the highest rank. Theophrastus, indeed, O Chrysophilus, as far as it lies within me, I shall not refuse you my advice and aid, provided that it does not involve manifest danger to myself. But tell me briefly, what is this business? Chrysophilus, I do not doubt that it has reached your ears, how I have wasted not only money, but which is even more precious time, in pursuit of that persuasion of knowledge which the learned call chemistry. And I am ashamed to confess how much I have been deceived by the vilest kind of men, those who call themselves alchemists and, of course, disciples of the philosophers. They boast themselves as disciples, but I have been miserably deceived, and, which is most grievous, my health has suffered due to the foul fumes and most terrible vapors, which I endured while hiding in caves like the troglodytes. The loss of all this has been so great that even whatever benefits might be gathered from it are to be considered of no value. Theophrastus, ha ha ha. I would perish if I had not, even though I am ignorant of all things, suspected exactly this. For last month when I passed by that little garden house of yours, I noticed such a foul and black smoke erupting from that underground furnace, that I thought I was looking at the very jaws of Avernus, in which Cacnea was cooking his feasts. But lest I conceive a wrongful opinion about your prudence, first of all your authority stood in the way, then the fact that you are born to a high station, later, your more mature age, not without experience of things, and finally the clearest examples, from which I had no doubt that you had become more cautious, at least through the danger experienced by another. Nor indeed could I persuade myself that you could have directed your mind toward such things, which are manifestly connected with harm, much less toward the most wicked impostors and slanderers of the art. Chrysophilus, truly, I was as cautious in this matter as I could be, but should I leave untried that which has been rendered indubitable by the judgment of so many authors? Especially when everything that pertains to this business has been handled by so many philosophies, should be most diligently written down? Finally, since I lack neither intelligence nor wealth nor leisure, but rather many occasions to conduct this matter properly are missing. But what about examples? since you alone suffice for me as the equivalent of many. If you would assist me and guide my ship struggling with storms in the midst of the waves into the harbor, I will ensure that you quickly understand how much benefit from my friendship, authority, and influence is at hand for you. Theophrastus, I recognize the crocodile's tears. Chrysophilus, what do you say? Theophrastus, I said that I recognize your goodwill. But from that very speech of yours, I understand that I, whom you have chosen as your advisor in this matter, will in no way satisfy you. For the idea that you might obtain tranquility or achieve your desire from this undertaking of yours is as reasonable as if the Vestal Virgins were to celebrate ithyphallic rites. Yet if I may be allowed to repeat some of what I have learned regarding the power and nature of the chymic art, perhaps you will realize how far you have strayed from the goal of this science with your many errors. Chrysophilus, that indeed I have long desired. Speak. Theophrastus, first of all you must understand that the chymic art is of all sciences the most ingenious, the most useful, and indeed the most necessary, so that it is not unworthy of a person devoting his entire lifetime to it. Yet more broadly than you believed, is evident, since this concerns metals and metallic substances, you must understand that it is constituted by a twofold distinction. One is physical, and is connected with natural principles arising from sympathy and antipathy. The other appears to be such, but is sophistical, it prefers to seem rather than to be. The former, as I said, from the secrets of nature usually produces admirable, most beautiful, and even beneficial if not divine effects. From these, certain things have been extracted by ingenious men and made common, so that they no longer deserve to be called arts in the fullest sense. However, some things have not yet been discovered, these remain arcane, and have persisted in this state up to the present day. Finally, certain things have indeed been discovered, but by very few, and almost no one has grasped them throughout the centuries. Among these one is the most outstanding, the single goal and true end of the entire chymic art, yet through wondrous skill and deep silence, it has always been hidden, so that it still deserves to be called arcane. Thus many insist more stubbornly than truthfully that it does not exist in nature. In striving toward this goal, since so many minds have labored in vain, wandering utterly astray, in order to seem as if they had achieved something, they turned instead to that other practice which I have called sophistical. They thought it best to take refuge in it, and thus, as I shall later explain, they fished with an iron hook. Chrysophilus, explain these things more precisely, for I do not know which discoveries of this art you have not yet made, that you may call discoveries. Theophrastus, the discoveries of chemistry concern partly metals, partly metallic substances. Those concerning metals can generally be classified as follows. Mixing them together so that something different appears, examples of this are quite common, altering them, as with iron. And it is especially common with copper, adding weight or reducing it, making certain substances more solid, changing color in some cases, as is most often done with iron, making some things softer, others harder. All of this, however, is done without the intent to deceive. Other, and indeed more subtle, operations concern metallic substances, such as gilding, silvering, and separations. Through these, the remarkable properties of metals have been investigated, as well as their affinity and aversion with other metals, which we may rightly call their sympathy, as with antimony, mercury, camphor, sulfur, chrysocholla, lead ash, and purified lead, in combination with gold, silver, brass, and so forth. To this belongs the invention of gunpowder, with its astonishing imitation of glass and saltpeter. Add also the knowledge by which glass is drawn into exceedingly long threads. I omit those matters related to medicine, since almost no remedy is entirely free from metallic or mineral substances. Are not all vapors, which they call distillations, subject to chemical art? Are not the chief compositions of colors? Are not the most fragrant and healthful incenses, and precious perfumes? Not to mention the simplifications of all reductions. Chrysophilus, I understand. But what are those things that you say have not yet been discovered? Theophrastus, as if I should wish to speak about those things that do not yet exist in nature. However, I believe that many more things can still be discovered, for example, the softening of glass without fire, the composition of electrum, the fabrication of the hardest stones, the distillation of the most subtle waters, and similar things that remain hidden. Chrysophilus, but now tell me about those things you said have already been discovered in the art of alchemy, but which are known only to very few. Theophrastus, these are the hardening of glass to the strength of diamond, the preparation of immediate and most effective remedies from metals and metallic substances for desperate illnesses, also an antidote of the highest refinement and certainty against all poisons, such as the one recently prepared, more by chance than by intent, by a certain minor and rustic metallurgist from Misnia, which has become widely known, and which, even at the peril of his own body, was compelled to be tested by the Elector of Saxony. Exquisite antidote, most certain. Finally, beyond all the things I have listed, there is a certain and concise method by which the most subtle and tenuous spirits are prepared. Their power is such that they can refine metals to a more perfect and elevated state by multiple proportions, without any deception of false transformation or alteration of substance. Chrysophilus, excellent. Theophrastus, may the gods preserve you. I have long been awaiting this. For the sake of this knowledge, I have undertaken so many expenses, I have endured so much. reads so many books, both those written by Asians and Europeans, had them translated, and worked to compile them into summaries. Yet despite all this effort, I find myself caught in frustration, stuck amidst raging storms, where I must navigate as if around the rocks of the sirens, and I greatly fear to do so. Though I have sought the counsel of many learned men who could explain each detail to me thoroughly among them all, whom I indeed acknowledge, you alone remain, who can point out to me that method and the books that deal with this subject explicitly. Theophrastus, if from those books of yours, whether they be Arabic or from another people, you can comprehend what I just mentioned, it is as difficult as plucking fruit from Tantalus's garden. Furthermore, whether those deceivers and impostors who accompany you can offer you any assistance in this pursuit is as certain as turning ebony into ivory with ink. Since those books contain nothing but riddles and pure obscurity, from which not even Oedipus could ever extract clarity. Chrysophilus, why then, if this is the case, have philosophers applied so much effort to this pursuit, and why do they so boldly promise it? Theophrastus, I do not deny that the ancients devoted great effort to it, but they concealed the matter through their descriptions. This seems to me to have been done for 4 reasons. First, to sharpen the intellects of idle men. Second, to provide an opportunity for the clever, since many celebrated and useful discoveries have flowed from these investigations. Theophrastus, third, to trouble curious men and to abuse their leisure and labor. They achieve this most effectively by assigning multiple names to the same thing, just as the pagans attribute many names to Jupiter. Finally, so that they, having understood the secrets of nature, might leave testimony for future generations. Chrysophilus, why then did they not remain silent, rather than writing exceedingly wordy commentaries that no one understands? Would it not have been better to clearly declare their views rather than leaving behind writings that make me believe these matters are mere trifles, contrived by impostors or some infernal demon to deceive and confound most people? Theophrastus, you should not say this, O Chrysophilus. However, if you insist that no clear words have ever been written on this matter, I will not strongly argue against you. But if you claim that everything beyond mere fictions is nothing at all, you act as they do. Those who, never having understood a subject nor even seen it, presume to judge it, much like the blind speaking of colors. I admit that the mass of books is vast as far as my knowledge extends, and that this matter is full of difficulties. Those unworthy of examining it ought to be excluded, except for those possessing true wisdom and magnificence. Some indeed claim to follow Hermes, Avicenna, Alkindus, and Averroes by name, but their works have been compiled by Europeans and non-Europeans alike, such as Gilgil, Richard the Englishman, Morienus, Rosinus, Stephanus the Lombard, and others who dare to call themselves philosophers, if it pleases the gods. To this group belong Arnold of Villanova and similar figures, whose dreams align with those of Maria, the sister of Moses, and also with those of the Scot who bears the title. Again, there exist the commentaries of others which, if read with judgment, are indeed tolerable, even not unworthy of reading, yet to understand them, one needs the thread of Theseus. The primary ones among them are those of Geber the Arab, and among the more recent ones, the writings of Aloysius Marlianus and Roger Bacon. However, among the more recent authors, none seems to have been of sounder mind than Ioannis Antonius Anguillara. Chrysophilus, good God, why did I not understand this many years ago? But now you must provide a remedy for my desperation. Theophrastus, indeed, you do not need me as a guide, for I have always disagreed with the opinions of all those whom you have ever heard. Not concerning the amount of discoveries in this art, which I have said are widespread, and which experience has also confirmed. If you wish to engage with those matters, you may spend your life in them by an easy path, in honest occupation, not without diverse delights. As an example, let metallurgical fusions be considered, by which not only animals and solid materials but also herbs, flowers, and even the smallest things, so that they appear natural, can be most accurately expressed. Likewise, distillations, by whose benefit not only herbs and juices but also the resins of trees, roots, and even stones and flints themselves, can be reduced to oil, water, and the finest spirits. In such things I would not hesitate to indulge you. Chrysophilus, why do you tell me of fusions and distillations? I had promised myself far greater things. Do you understand what I mean? And to make myself clearer, I wish to know whether metals, especially in their purest form, can be transformed, and by what method they can be transformed, or whether baser metals can be changed into nobler ones, so that ultimately the generation of the purest gold may take place, and what those principles are, whether they be spirits or fundamental elements, by which such a transmutation may occur. For you cannot deny that these matters have been perfected. Theophrastus, it is absurd to attempt to teach what I have always admitted can never be done. Nor have I ever experimented with such things myself. I am aware from other sources that you have wasted your efforts in vain, along with all your other errors. For these are self-evident axioms of nature. Nothing can arise from nothing. Likewise, generation is a matter of nature, not of art. The principles of generation in any case must align with that which they wish to generate. They cannot differ but must participate in it as much as possible. Thus, just as no crocodile comes from an egg made of metal, so too the transformation you seek is contrary to the very nature of things. To answer your question more precisely, metals, especially those that differ in weight, cannot be transmuted. Gold, differing in gravity from other metals, does not separate by any small proportion. Therefore, regarding other metals that seem more akin to one another, such as copper and iron, which scarcely differ in weight and density, I will not say they cannot be transmuted, but such a matter does not concern your inquiry. Chrysophilus, yet surely even the ancient writers do not positively deny this, and if they do, you alone claim they are wrong. Theophrastus, have you truly understood what they said? Why have you not examined them more carefully? Do they not say that what is generated must return to its principles, since in nature this is a necessary condition? Setting aside all uncertainties, as if transmutation were irrelevant, and as if the new generation of things could arise from artifice, or from nothing through skill, such notions are absurd according to the laws of nature, which have no sympathy for them. Therefore, if you understand correctly, even the philosophers deny what I have called false, Chrysophilus, but the philosophers say that quicksilver and sulfur are the origin of all metals. Therefore, from quicksilver and sulfur, metals and even gold itself can be made. Theophrastus, if you had said they could be refined, I would agree. But do you not yet see that refining and generating are different things? I will provide a clearer example, using the most basic matter. If someone were given 10 grains of wheat and said that bread could be made from them in an instant, you would easily understand that generation requires both the right process and time. For when it is not the field but time that produces the ears of grain, this must be understood. Would you attempt to teach a man from the most distant regions of India or Iceland, someone who has never heard of sowing or reaping, about these matters? And if you refuse to speak plainly with him, instead writing mere riddles, how would he understand? This is the way. First the earth must be calcined, then ground, the grains dissolved and buried. What grows from this must again be ground, dissolved, sublimated, then coagulated, and finally baked. He, if I am not mistaken, would understand that the soil must be plowed, the clumps of earth turned, seeds sown, and all rustic labor undertaken while awaiting the harvest. Maturity having been reached, with the grain already harvested, should it not, without further great labor, be transmuted into bread? And yet those riddles contained in your books are even more inexplicable. Chrysophilus, I quite agree with you, but let us return to where we digressed. You said that what has been generated must be reduced to its beginnings and that nature itself agrees with this. And yet to me this seems impossible. Theophrastus, not only is it possible, but to me it seems quite easy. However, tau cup alpha tau. Let us take an example. Those who wish to refine wine more artfully take a shortcut. If they reduce the purest spirit back to the very herb from which it was derived, which still retains such power that a single drop of its spirit, infused into an entire quart of wine, instantly draws out its nature, fully expressing the flavor of absinthe. Why should something similar not be possible with metals? I do not see why. Chrysophilus, the things you describe are not impossible, provided one can perform the necessary experiments as often as one wishes. Yet even if you claim otherwise, one can still attempt them repeatedly. I expect nothing more than for you to take up your pen and set down the entire matter for me in writing. Theophrastus, but what is the point of demanding this from me? If I knew it exactly, you know well that it is bound by the law of mystery, which must remain inviolable, as secrets should not be revealed. Moreover, if I had attempted or wished to experiment with such a thing, I would admit it. If the endeavor had failed, then I would be a laughingstock to all and no different from the impostors and fools. If I were to say that I had succeeded, do you understand how many troubles would threaten me? For, to speak honestly, this is an affair that has never been without harm to any private individual, and for kings themselves, it has often been ruinous. Therefore, it should not even be something a wise man wishes for, unless he is so utterly freed that he can hope for boundless wealth and need nothing. For this reason, if I am not mistaken, you understand why the secrets of this science have been kept by the very few throughout the ages. Chrysophilus, but I strongly believe that these secrets were never entrusted to any writings at all, but, as in the case of what is called the Hebrew Kabbalah, they have only been transmitted through tradition to their successors. Theophrastus, and this is indeed very likely. Yet this science was once written down without deception or obscurity, and it was transmitted from the Asiatic peoples to the Greeks. Chrysophilus, as if among the Greeks it could have remained so hidden in such darkness that it was concealed as scarcely as among the Sumerians in the densest of shadows. Theophrastus, that is true, but it is difficult to guard something that everyone desires. Consider, for instance, treasures that are unearthed with great effort, or women of perfect beauty, whose chastity is so often assailed. Have you read the story of the Argonauts and their expedition to Colchis as told by the poets? Chrysophilus, indeed, I learned of it from Apollonius Rhodius. Theophrastus, have you noticed that the entire history of alchemical art is hidden within it? Chrysophilus, not at all. Theophrastus, I think that Aloysius Marlianus himself recognized this, as did others. The golden fleece is mentioned in the commentaries on this art, for it is believed that it was something great, given that so much effort and hardship was undertaken. The sea was braved, and the nobles of Greece, under the leadership of Jason, ventured forth. It is therefore likely that the ram of the Golden Fleece was nothing other than parchment, which is made from the skins of animals, and books inscribed with golden letters, in which were contained golden secrets, that is, the mysteries of our art. But it was suspended in the inner sanctum of Edes, the king of Colchis, and in the temple itself, not without the utmost diligence of hidden guardians. Medea, the daughter of the king, is said to have revealed this inexpressible treasure, and she herself is believed not to have possessed immeasurable wealth, but to have accomplished other marvelous deeds, especially with little effort, which seems impossible. She is also said to have restored her decrepit father-in-law to stronger health, as if renewing his youth. Examine this more carefully. Does not Apollonius himself also, though briefly, mention metals, air, and the transmutation of gold? Chrysophilus, immortal god, you have revealed yourself through these statements, and I am now more certain that you truly penetrate the innermost chambers of true knowledge. Have you not already performed wonders? Why then do you hesitate to pursue them? Have you not saved those afflicted with the most desperate diseases, though you have never set foot in the halls of medical schools, using only your own remedy, what some call potable gold? The physicians of all Europe have long yielded the victory to you in this matter. Therefore, hesitate no longer, for you cannot cause offense to me. Theophrastus, even if I were to acknowledge these things as true, you know well that the wise say, what you wish to keep secret, tell no one. I indeed confess that I have learned many things about the energy of metals and metallic substances, and that with physical reasoning, whose practice has been made public for utility, and which bestows much, including the very faculty of healing. But if I have attempted anything for my private benefit, no human being could possibly know it, since I understand that this has been the ruin of kings themselves. Jason, who was overthrown along with his wife and his children, books along with the royal court, were destroyed. Now you understand whether such a thing is desirable for a wise person. Consider also, Chrysophilus, how much you owe me today, if you begin to be wise, for my warnings. For you understand how long you have been occupied with sophistical alchemy, caught in the golden hook. And indeed, countless misfortunes have befallen many, the ruin of their spirits, their bodies, and their fortunes, leaving them with only the consolation that they would rather be seen as experts in this art than actually possess anything of real value. And they prefer to be believed as those who fabricate gold, rather than those who truly possess it. And what is even more atrocious is that they lead their companions into suffering, ensnaring as many as they can, bringing them into evident peril. Chrysophilus, such is the force of your arguments that my mind has been completely turned away from those to whom it was once devoted. Therefore, I will not utter another word about this matter. But I ask only one thing from you. Since experience in this field is entirely bound up with benefit, do not let any part of your knowledge be lost to me in the future. Indicate to me openly what remains to be said. Theophrastus, I will explain this to you in the briefest terms for your sake. First of all, as far as books are concerned, you should know that nothing more harmful has crept into this field than the trifles of those who boast of being interpreters of the ancients. By this name, Raymond Lull is especially worthy of mention, who, just as he corrupted nearly all sciences, so too he defiled this art shamefully and thus wished to be the leader of impostors. A book of his kind exists, whose opening states, all wisdom is from God. In this, that trifler promises that he will resolve the enigmas of all the ancients, remove stumbling blocks and expose errors, bringing them from darkness into light. At last, after much rambling and barbaric verbosity, he abandons the reader in intricate labyrinths, even though he calls his book a direct path. Finally, he ends in the whitening of copper, the coloring of silver, and unheard of transformations. It seemed necessary to refute these things more precisely, so that I might accuse this man, who calls himself a philosopher and claims to have received wisdom from God, of foolishness. There is no such danger in the writings of the ancients. Secondly, you will recognize an impostor immediately from his words, when he, right from the beginning, starts talking about the stone of Hermes, the stone, I say, the sacred philosophical roar. If someone immediately begins to thunder about the philosophical stone, this is the first sign of madness. If he then says that several years must be spent on perfecting it, if he speaks about underground caves, upright furnaces, inclined, open or closed, if he talks about charcoal from valleys or mountains, about glass from trees, about exercises in greater and lesser works, about the philosophical mercury, about the king antimony, about the clay of wisdom, about the 12 waters pertaining to the art, and other similar things, then he is either insane or an impostor. If you trust in these things and undertake the work, the result will be that soon you will say with the Greeks Rupsilon, Omicron et Upsilon Omicron et Taphi Upsilon Kappa. If there were someone among men who could lay bare all the secrets of this science, and you were to encounter him, still it would never seem likely to me that he would teach you anything certain, since the wise understand well what fate awaits those who spread knowledge of hidden sciences. They will not attempt it unless they wish to be miserable, and instead of reward, will wear golden shackles for life. I do not deny that you may learn much from conversations with the learned and dispel the fog of the mind. For even Socrates admitted that he had administered no doctrine to anyone. But just as a physician does not grant sight but removes dullness and directs the vision towards the object, so it must be judged in all knowledge. Since these things are so, yet the intemperance of men, their emotions, obstinacy and desire like raging horses, drive many headlong, so that before they begin to be wise they reach the utmost misfortune, and, as Homeric dictates, it casts them into vile destruction and utterly perishes them. Finis.